My name is Danielle. I'm 32 years old, and the night my brother's fiancé attacked me in my own kitchen was the night my entire family broke apart forever. The first thing I remember is the cold. The kitchen tiles pressed against my cheek hard and unrelenting, while the coppery taste of blood filled my mouth. My ribs screamed with every shallow breath, each inhale a small calculation of pain. I blinked, vision swimming, and through the blur I saw him, my brother Michael. He wasn't rushing to help, wasn't kneeling beside me, no. He stood by the door, his face twisted in annoyance like my broken body on the floor was an inconvenience, a mess he didn't want to deal with. He didn't say a word. He stepped over my legs, careful not to scuff his shoes, and walked out of my apartment. A moment later, my phone buzzed beside me on the tile. I dragged myself toward it, my fingers trembling, and saw his message light up the screen. "Stay away from us." 4 words. 4 words that cut deeper than any bruise. For a moment I just lay there, tears burning in my eyes, wondering how love between siblings could turn so cruel. But then something shifted inside me. The pain didn't vanish, but it hardened, crystallized into something sharp. I picked up my phone and typed a single word back. Done. For them it meant I was out of their lives for good. But for me it was a promise. A promise that the Danielle they had always known, the one who forgave, who cleaned up after everyone, who sacrificed herself to keep the peace, was gone. To understand why this betrayal shattered me, you have to know what my family was like. It was always the Michael show. Growing up, he was the golden child, the chosen one, the son my parents doted on. At Christmas dinners, my mother would raise her glass to toast his smallest achievements, like the year he got a tiny raise at his entry-level job, and she called him the future of our family. Meanwhile, I sat in silence even though I had just landed the biggest promotion of my career. My mother patted my hand distractedly and said, "That's nice, dear. Don't overdo it. Remember, a woman's real treasure is her family." It was always like that. When our grandfather died, the small inheritance he left was funneled quietly to help Michael with a car. I was told, "You're fine on your own. You don't need it." When Michael lost Dad's vintage watch, he blamed me, and I worked months at a miserable part-time job to replace it. That was my role: peacekeeper, fixer, invisible pillar. And then came Sarah. When Michael first brought her home, she looked fragile, lost, with big eyes and a sob story about her past. I felt sorry for her. I welcomed her in. When she struggled to find a place to live, I co-signed her first lease. When she needed money, I fronted her deposit and first month's rent. I rewrote her resume, encouraged her, defended her when friends warned me she seemed opportunistic. She even cried once and told me I was the sister she never had. Lying on that cold kitchen floor, those words curdled into poison in my throat. When I finally pulled myself upright, my reflection in the oven door startled me. My swollen lip, the bruises forming like ugly galaxies across my ribs. I called the only person I knew would believe me without hesitation, Jessica, my best friend since childhood. My voice cracked as I whispered, "Jess, she hit me. She hit me and Michael just watched." Jessica's reply was steel. "I'm coming. Don't move. And Danielle, you're calling the police. This isn't a family argument. This is a crime." She was right. This wasn't just a fight. This was assault. And Michael's text wasn't just rejection, it was abandonment. That night, they drew their line in the sand. And for the first time in my life, I drew mine. The next morning, I woke aching from head to toe, my lips swollen, a bruise blooming across my ribs. But my mind was frighteningly calm. I opened my laptop, pulled up my bank's secure portal, and stared at the document they had begged me to sign months earlier, the $750,000 mortgage for their dream house. The one with the white columns and wraparound porch. The one they couldn't have without me. I was the guarantor. My credit, my salary, my spotless record had been the key. Without me, the entire loan collapsed. I clicked withdraw guarantee. The system tried to stop me, warning pop-up security questions, two-factor codes. Each step felt like cutting another thread of obligation that had tied me to them for too long. Finally, I signed my name. One small digital signature and their dream detonated. By the time Michael called the next day, his voice high and frantic, I was ready. "Danielle, What did you do? The bank called, the loan was denied. I answered with ice. You told me to stay away. That includes my name, my credit, my money. I hung up before he could speak again. For the first time in my life, the silence was mine. The fallout was immediate. My phone became a grenade, vibrating with call after call, each one angrier than the last. Michael left me voicemails that swung from pleading to threatening within seconds. Danielle, please, you can't do this to us. Think of everything we've built. Then in the next breath, if you don't fix this, don't ever call yourself my sister again. I didn't respond. For once, silence was my answer. By the third day, my parents showed up at my door. I nearly didn't open it, but a part of me still hoped they might come to see the truth, to ask if I was okay. Instead, the moment I cracked the door, my mother pushed past me, her perfume cloying, her voice sharp with accusation. What have you done, Danielle? She hissed. Michael called us in tears. Do you have any idea how humiliated he is? Humiliated. That was the word she used. Not injured, not betrayed, not assaulted. I pulled my sweater tighter around me, covering the bruises that still shadowed my ribs. Did he tell you why I did it? I asked quietly. Did he tell you Sarah hit me? That he stepped over me while I was bleeding on the floor? My father's eyes flickered uncertain, but my mother's mouth tightened into a line. You must have provoked her. Sarah wouldn't just attack you. You've always had a way of stirring things. The words sliced me open deeper than Sarah's fists ever could. Stirring things. That was my mother's polite code for existing in ways that inconvenienced Michael. For wanting recognition. For not keeping the peace at any cost. I shook my head slowly. You weren't there. You didn't see the look on her face when she hit me. And you didn't see Michael leave me on the floor like I was nothing. Enough, my mother snapped. We're not here to argue. You will call the bank, reinstate the loan, and apologize to your brother. Family comes first. Family comes first. The same phrase they had used my entire life whenever Michael needed covering, whenever I was asked to sacrifice. It was the anthem of my invisibility. This time I let the words settle, then I met her gaze steadily. If family comes first, why wasn't I worth protecting? The silence that followed was thunderous. My father looked away. My mother's face flushed with anger she couldn't voice. Finally, she grabbed her purse, muttering, "You'll regret this." They left without another word. I leaned against the closed door, my knees trembling but my heart steady. For the first time, I hadn't folded. Over the next weeks, the narrative twisted. Sarah began telling anyone who would listen that I had attacked her. She posted vague statuses on social media, cryptic lines about toxic women and jealous siblings. She even showed up at a mutual friend's gathering with a bandage on her wrist, milking sympathy with crocodile tears. I knew what she was doing, poisoning the well, painting herself as the victim before I could speak. It was infuriating, but it also clarified something for me. If I stayed silent, her lies would take root. If I wanted to reclaim my life, I needed proof. So I began gathering it. Jessica helped me install cameras in my apartment, discreet but effective. I filed a police report attaching photos of my bruises, the medical visit I had forced myself to schedule, even though it felt humiliating to bear my injuries to a stranger. I sent copies of Michael's stay-away text to my lawyer, who raised an eyebrow and said, "This might be more useful than you realize." The private investigator I'd hired to trace the mortgage funds was still on retainer. I redirected him. "Find out everything you can about Sarah," I told him. "Her past, her debts, her relationships. Leave nothing out." Weeks later, the folder he placed in my hands was thicker than I expected. Inside were eviction notices from 2 previous apartments, court documents from a restraining order filed by a former roommate, and a string of small claims for unpaid loans. And then buried at the back, the Jewel Hospital records from 3 years ago, showing she had been treated for injuries during an altercation with another woman. The attending doctor's notes used the word assault. Sarah had a pattern, and now I had the proof. Still, doubt gnawed at me in the quiet hours. I wondered if exposing her would finally sever me from my family forever. I wondered if Michael, blinded by his devotion to her, would even believe it. But then I remembered his face that night in my kitchen, the way he stepped over me like I was trash. That image silenced my hesitation. The next family gathering came sooner than expected, my parents' anniversary dinner. I debated not going, but something in me, rage maybe, or simply the need to reclaim my voice, made me RSVP yes. When I arrived, Sarah was already there, radiant in a red dress, her hand hooked through Michael's arm. She smiled at me sweetly, as though she hadn't left me bruised and bleeding weeks earlier. My parents greeted her with kisses on the cheek. My mother squeezed her hand and called her our future. I sat through dinner in silence, my appetite drowned by the bile in my throat. But when dessert was served and my mother raised her glass to toast the family we are building, I rose slowly to my feet. Actually, I said, my voice clear and steady, I have something to share. Sarah's smile faltered. Michael's hand tightened around hers. This was it. The moment the balance of power shifted. I didn't clink my glass or clear my throat. I just stood and let the room notice me, the same way you notice a storm, when the air changes quiet first, then undeniable. My mother's smile froze mid-toast. My father's hand hovered over the wine bottle. Michael stared at his plate as if the pattern might offer an escape hatch. Sarah gave me that soft performative smile, sympathy pinned to a mask. Danielle, let's not make a scene, she murmured, sugar on broken glass. I'm not making a scene, I said evenly. I'm making a record. A small tremor moved through the tablecloth, the kind that runs under your skin when a truth is about to rise. I took my phone from my clutch and set it beside my dessert spoon. 3 weeks ago you came to my apartment. We argued. Then you hit me. Repeatedly. Michael watched. Afterwards, he texted me to stay away, and I said I would, starting with withdrawing my name from your mortgage. I met my mother's eyes. That's why the bank called. My mother opened her mouth ready with scolding and shame, but I raised a hand, and to my own surprise, she stopped. I slid an envelope across the table to her. That is my medical report, time-stamped the night of the assault. Photographs. Notes consistent with blunt force trauma. My mother stared at the manila edge as if it might bite. She didn't touch it. Sarah laughed, thin, breathy. She's been very stressed, she offered to the room. You all know how intense her job is. Things get exaggerated. It's not exaggerated, I said, letting my voice stay low, letting the details carry the weight. It's documented. I turned to my father. Dad, you always taught me paper matters. Here it is. I placed a second envelope at his setting. Police report number, date, time, photographs. My father looked from the envelope to me, something like caution threading past the habit of dismissal. Michael finally spoke, voice small. Danny, come on, you're blowing this out of proportion. Sarah's wrist, remember, you grabbed her. You mean the wrist she bandaged for sympathy a week later? I picked up my phone and tapped once. I don't have a camera in my soul, Michael, but I do have one in my hallway. I turned the screen so the nearest faces could see the freeze frame, my door opening, Sarah on the threshold, jaw tight, eyes bright with rage. I swiped. The shove. My stumble back out of frame. Michael in the hall glance at me, then away, then out. The sound in the room changed, like when a high wind drops, and you realize it wasn't the trees making the noise, it was the lie. My aunt looked away. My father exhaled slow, and for the first time that night Sarah's expression cracked. Something feral flashed underneath. My mother snatched for something familiar, image order. This is a family celebration, she hissed, the porcelain of her smile wobbling. You will not embarrass us in front of— I felt something inside me settle. Not hard and settle like clay finally centered on a wheel. I am not embarrassing you, I said. I am refusing to be your embarrassment. I turned back to Sarah. I co-signed your first lease, I fronted your deposit, I helped you write a resume. And when people warned me, I defended you. You called me the sister you never had. And then you beat me in my own home. Sarah's face went smooth, that eerie calm liars use when they're about to escalate. You've always been jealous, Danielle, she said, almost tender. Of Michael, of me, of anyone who finds happiness you can't control. Somewhere in me a laugh rose. Not unkind, just tired. Jealousy isn't what split my lip, I answered. Your fists did. I slid a third envelope across to the center of the table. Evictions, small claims. A prior incident, emergency room documented injuries during an altercation with another woman. There's a pattern here, Sarah. I didn't see it because I wanted a sister, but I see it now. Michael knocked his knee against the table, silverware rattling. You hired someone to dig into her past. That's sick. What's sick is thinking my silence would be permanent, I said. What's sick is stepping over your own sister's body to get to a doorway. The words landed and stayed. I watched them find him, watched them try to crawl under his skin where excuses used to live. For a second, Michael's mouth worked like he might shape an apology. He didn't. Enough! Sarah's chair rasped backward. She stood palms flat on the tablecloth and stared at me with that coiled look I had seen 3 weeks earlier. If you say one more word, I will do what I asked, and I didn't raise my voice. Hit me again in front of witnesses this time? Or will you just lie louder? The room held its breath. Even the restaurant hum seemed to thin to a single thread. I could feel my pulse steady. I could feel my feet planted. My mother finally reached for the nearest envelope. Her hands trembled when she cracked the seal. She slid out the photos and the color left her face. For half a heartbeat, I thought, this is it. She'll see me. She'll see. Then she stacked the images neatly face down. Danielle, she said, voice cool and brittle as winter glass, you will not ruin this family over a misunderstanding. There it was, the old script creased from overuse. I folded my napkin carefully and set it on my plate. No, I said. You're right, I won't ruin this family. I lifted my bag. I'm leaving you to do that yourselves. I didn't storm out. I wasn't a storm. I was a tide going out, taking back what belonged to me, my voice, my name, my future. At the doorway, I paused because one more thing needed saying, and I wanted it recorded in the walls. I looked at Michael. When you texted, "Stay away from us," you made a choice. Tonight, I'm making mine. Stay away from me. I stepped into the hallway's softer light, the chatter of other rooms rising to meet me. My hands shook, not with fear, but with the aftershock of truth landing. Jessica was waiting at the curb car, idling eyes searching mine. I slid into the passenger seat and let my head tip back. We drove in silence for a block too, the city's lights blinking like distant beacons. How do you feel? She asked finally. I searched for the word and found it clean and strange on my tongue, aligned. Later that night, the counterattack arrived. A digital chime, a new email, the client portal's sterile font, a certified filing notifying me of a temporary restraining order against me. The narrative inverted in black and white, their lies braided into legalese, unhinged, jealous harassing. A request for the court to bind me where their hands could not. For a breath, despair clawed. Then I opened my desktop folder, evidence for court, and felt the steadiness return. They wanted a stage. Fine, I had a script. In the weeks after the hearing, the silence from my family was deafening. No calls, no texts, not even a half-hearted apology wrapped in blame. It was as if I had been written out of their script, entirely erased from the story they wanted to tell the world. And maybe for the first time in my life, I realized I wasn't desperate to be included anymore. I used to believe belonging meant twisting myself into smaller and smaller shapes, sanding down my edges until I could fit neatly into whatever role they needed. The quiet daughter, the helpful sister, the financial safety net. But standing in that courtroom, telling my story without flinching, I understood something I should have known years ago. Belonging isn't about being invited to someone else's table. It's about building your own. So that's what I started to do. I poured myself into my work not to prove anything to them, but because it was mine. I signed up for a pottery class with Jessica, laughing at the clay that refused to obey my hands. I began journaling every night, pouring out words I had swallowed for years. Some pages were raw and angry, others trembling with sadness, but each one felt like a stone lifted off my chest. Slowly the bruises faded. My body healed, but my heart carried scars, reminders of what it felt like to be left bleeding on the floor by the very people who were supposed to protect me. I don't try to erase those scars anymore. They remind me of what I survived. They remind me that my pain has a shape, a history, a truth, and that I am not invisible. Michael never reached out again. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if he ever lies awake at night, replaying the moment he stepped over me, if he feels the weight of that choice pressing on his chest. But even if he does, it's not my responsibility to carry his shame. That's his burden now. Sarah's too. I don't need their remorse to move forward. My parents, of course, chose their loyalty. To them, bloodlines mean more than truth, appearances more than justice. But I've stopped trying to untangle their choices. I can grieve what I never had without begging for it anymore. One evening, as I watered the small plant Jessica had given me after the assault, I noticed a new leaf unfurling tender green alive. I stood there for a long time staring at it, tears in my eyes. Because that's what healing looks like. It doesn't happen in a rush. It's slow, almost imperceptible, until one day you realize growth has been happening all along, even in the places you thought were barren. If you've listened to my story, maybe some part of it feels familiar to you. Maybe you know what it's like to be betrayed by the people you trusted most, to be silenced by those who should have defended you, to be painted as the villain in someone else's script. And maybe, like me, you've wondered if you'll ever feel whole again. I can tell you this: you will. Not because the scars vanish, not because the people who hurt you suddenly change, but because you will change. You'll discover a strength you never knew you had forged in the fire of survival. You'll learn that you are not defined by the ones who broke you, but by the way you rise after the breaking. And if you're standing on the edge of that choice now, whether to stay small or to reclaim your voice, let me be the one to tell you: choose yourself, even if it means walking away, especially if it means walking away. Thank you for staying with me through this painful, raw story. If it resonated with you, I hope you'll give this video a like, share it with someone who might need courage of their own, and subscribe for more stories of survival, betrayal, and the quiet strength that comes after. And please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your story, because your voice matters too. At the end of the day, family isn't just the people you're born to. Sometimes family is the ones who stand beside you when everyone else walks away. And sometimes family is yourself, the version of you who refuses to give up, who chooses truth over lies, who blooms again after being cut down. I thought I was broken, but I wasn't. I was just waiting for the right soil.